Another week in the PWHL schedule is in the books, and there is plenty to talk about both on and off the ice. New York split their two games, both coming in a shootout. You had Kristen Campbell, who's on an absolute heater, leading Toronto to their 5th straight win. Montreal, well, they took over top spot in the standings, and Minnesota, they're going to be without their number 1 pick for a while. Rob Pizzo, Saroya Tinker back with you. A lot to get through. Let's get right to it. And we're going to start with injury news. Taylor Heise, number 1 pick in the draft, of course. We found out she's been put on LTIR. She's going to be out a while. I'm not going to ask you how much Minnesota's going to miss her. We know how much they're going to miss her. She's a very good hockey player.
Yes.
But here's my question. It looks as though she, suffered this injury in Game 7 of the rivalry series. I'm wondering if this is going to have an effect where GMs are going to say, no, you can't go play in this series that really doesn't mean much, because now they're without one of their best players for a long period of time. Is this the first of something that we could see?
Yeah, first of all, I will say it is that point in the season where we will see injuries happen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know after speaking with GMs, coaches, that players, when they came back from the rivalry series, they were exhausted and then had to proceed into league play. So I definitely think it will play a factor as to whether or not they can go to rivalry series and if rivalry series will even continue.
Yeah.
Obviously, these players are amazing to see at World Championships and Olympics, but they might just have to save it for then. We do have a professional league now that everyone can compete in, and I think that we do have to hone in and focus on PWHL hockey.
Let's talk PWHL hockey then. Good transition. New York. I read a lot of previews before the first puck was ever dropped, and I can't tell you how many people had New York as a contender. And I'm not saying they're not just yet, but I think a lot of people, if we would have told them at this point of the season that they were sitting in 4th, despite having the top scorer in the league in Alex Carpenter, despite having really good goaltending, despite having, Ella Shelton, contributing on the back end as well, they would be surprised. I don't want to make this too over dramatic, but what's going on with New York? Should they not be battling for first place at this point?
Yeah, I do think they should be battling for first place, but at the same time, we see Alex Carpenter, we see Abbey Rock playing 28 to 30 minutes a game, and that's exhausting for those players. And I do think Howie Draper has to realize he has amazing other players in his lineup. He's got Jaguar, you got Jesse Eldridge, you got Emma Woods that are also goal scorers. So I do think that they're going to have to start to lean on those other players as these players start to get tired and as they make that run for first place instead of 4th.
I think a few weeks ago I asked you what's wrong with Toronto. Well, nothing's wrong with Toronto now. 5 straight wins. Everything just seemed to shift for them, and everything just started to click. Kristen Campbell being maybe the number 1 reason they've won these 5 games. Left off that rivalry series roster. I'm wondering if that kind of motivated her to say, you know what, I should have been there. Let me show you what I'm doing now. But your thoughts on Toronto?
I think that's exactly what it was. I mean, as an athlete, you go through your ups and downs, mental challenges, physical challenges, but I think it's really a big testament to Troy Ryan continuing to believe in her and realize that she is their number 1 goalie and just waiting for her to find her footing and get in there. And she's done that now, and her team can trust her. She's backing them up, and they're great defensively as well. And come on, Spooner has been impeccable.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. I want to talk about championships because the Toronto Six got their Isabel Cup rings this weekend, and when I saw this story, I was trying to think, did I know anybody on that team? And I thought, yes, I do. She's sitting right across from me. First things first, show us the bling.
The bling.
Yeah, that is. I love the ring because sometimes they get so big that you think, how could an athlete ever wear that?
Yes.
You could wear that, and it just looks good.
Yeah.
But, how good was it just to not only kind of close that chapter on that team, but to have your team honored in this way? Because maybe for young fans, they think the PWHL just kind of came out of nowhere, but there were a lot of players, a lot of people, and a lot of teams and leagues that led us to this point. So how great was it to be part of that ceremony?
I mean, I think it's just important to acknowledge the entire history of women's hockey, not just the Toronto Six. And that's exactly what we were able to do at our ring ceremony. We acknowledged the old NWHL, the CWHL, the new NWHL, PHF, PWHP. There's been so many leagues that have helped us get to this point. And it was so nice to be able to close this chapter. We're the last group of women to win the Isabel Cup, which is a feat in itself. But at the same time, closing that chapter so we can move on and focus on PWHL hockey now.
We're not going to close this chapter. I got still a lot I want to talk about. We saw Ridley Gregg in the NHL pull the old slap shot. Morgan Riley took exception. He got a 5-game suspension. Well, this has made its way into women's hockey. Abbey Murphy, University of Minnesota, with this slap shot into the empty net, loses her footing a little bit, which that's what I would have chirped if that's me. You were a defender, and I'm really curious to hear your opinion on this. If this happened and you were the last defender back, are you taking exception?
If I'm the last defender back on the opposing team, I am not having any patience for that. I'm definitely probably coming after her, or at least chirping her for the fall.
Yeah.
But if I'm on her team, I'm probably cheering and
You
happy
can't
about
have it both ways. Stop it. You're telling me if someone on your team does that, you're cheering. If someone on the other team does it, you're going after them?
Man, I mean, I like it. I think it's a great move. It's a little rude at the end of the day.
Wow, you're just sitting squarely on that fence, and I didn't think a defender would ever do that. I thought you would say, you never do that. I'm against it. I think whoever does it, well, you got to pay the consequences.
Fair enough.
All right, let's wrap this up. Moments of the week. We've got 3 of them, and they really hit every different angle. So let's start with February, Black History Month, and many of the players celebrated with some wardrobe choices. This is Madison Packer with the black rosy jersey, a little bit of a hat tip to the PHF. Also, the PWHL had these great Black History Month shirts as well. Your thoughts on how these hockey players entered their rinks with on Black History Month?
I love it from Madison Packer. I think it's also important to note that historically, this is the only professional jersey that has a black woman on it. So for her to bring this back out and represent and show that black rosy jersey, I think it's awesome. And then our Black History Month shirts, I think we really wanted to be unified as a league, show that we're supporting Black History Month. And the artist Dana McLean was able to put these together for us in a very short period of time. But at the same time, we were able to be unified as a league and show our support for Black History Month. And actually half of the proceeds will go back to Black Girl Hockey Club for those shirts. So
awesome.
We're excited.
Awesome to see. All right, next up. I don't know if you're a gambler. I'm a gambler. I once had a bet where I had to refer to myself in the third person for 2 straight days, which really sucked. But it's made its way to the PWHL as Carly Jackson made a bet and won. So Toronto GM Gina Kingsbury had to wear a sleeveless shirt in the gym. So Rob Pizzo wants to know your thoughts on this picture.
I mean, you can always count on Carly Jackson to have some fun and with her teammates, but now with the GM too, I think it's awesome to see how it shows that they're connecting as a team. And I mean, I don't place many bets, but Gina lost this one. So let's see those muscles, Gina.
Yeah, you pay up. You never welch. When you lose a bet, you pay up. One more thing I want to show you. It's that old saying, deja vu all over again. This is Claire Dalton scoring a goal. It was a nice goal. It made you kind of go, oh, wow, look at that. And you saw her kind of flying into the corner. But we don't want to give her credit here. We want to give Graham Hughes credit from CP for catching this picture.
Oh, yes.
Does this picture look familiar? I mean, it's been over 50 years since this picture was taken. Bobby Orr flying through the air, but that's got to be one of those pictures where she's got to frame it and put it in her house. Incredible shot.
Oh, yeah. Shout out Claire Dalton. I was fortunate enough to play with her at Yale for a period of time. She's an amazing leader, was an amazing captain, and for her to get this goal on Mashmeyer and celebrate like Bobby Orr, I think that's pretty sweet.
We had to invert it to make it look exactly like Orr's, but anytime you're put in the same sentence as the greatest defenseman in hockey history, it's always good. Want to let you know, CBC, we've got you covered. More PWHL action coming up. Next game, Tuesday, February 27th, Toronto at Minnesota, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can catch it on CBC Gem and cbcsports.ca. Saroya, thanks for doing this. Thanks for dressing up with the bling, too.
Thank you for having me.
See you next week.